We're here about learning to live the best way you can with who you are. We're here about changing parts of you, but others is just accepting that that's who you are. Because life, you can't be happy all the time. Life is tough.
Welcome to the Coaching Revealed podcast series. I'm one of your hosts, Austin Matzel. In today's episode, we explore the transformative impact of a strengths-based approach, a cornerstone of positive psychology and coaching, with Claudia Aronowitz, a professional coach, mediator, and public health expert. Claudia is interviewed by Dr. Pamela Larde, Director of Education at the Institute of Coaching, and they discuss how positive psychology, silence, and active listening can elevate lives and coaching practices alike. Claudia's journey into coaching is both inspiring and deeply personal. With a background in nutrition and a master's degree in public health, her early career focused on child injury prevention in Israel and Canada. However, a cancer diagnosis in 2010 became a pivotal moment, leading her to embrace coaching as a way to channel her innate strength of helping others. Trained in positive psychology coaching, Claudia cites that the transformative power of coaching has been a key driver for her career. She highlights how having a positive outlook can be a catalyst for individuals to create change in their lives, often revealing hidden capabilities that individuals take for granted. The conversation delves into the art of coaching, emphasizing the profound role of listening and silence. Claudia shares how to focus on strengths and hold space for clients that is free from personal bias, fosters trust, and enables deeper self-discovery. This episode is a must-listen for anyone passionate about coaching, personal growth, or the science of flourishing. Thank you for tuning into Coaching Revealed. Let's get started.
Well, hello, Claudia. It is so great to have you on today's podcast. Just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Pamela Larde, and I am the Director of Education for the Institute of Coaching. And today's guest is Claudia Aronowitz, who will be joining us to talk about her work in positive psychology and how that intersects with coaching. Really excited because positive psychology is foundational to all of the work that I've done in my academic career. And it's just near and dear to my heart. So I'm really excited to hear about her experience. But just to give you a quick overview of who she is, Claudia is an accomplished leadership coach, mediator, and trainer with extensive experience in both the health and not-for-profit sectors. After more than 20 years in senior management roles, she transitioned into coaching and has since worked with leaders in a variety of industries. She is known for her holistic approach to maximizing both personal and professional potential. She guides and supports her clients through change and transition. Claudia holds a master's of public health, specializing in behavioral change. She's credentialed with the International Coach Federation and certified with Coaches Training Institute. She holds a certificate in positive psychology and is trained in organizational and relationship systems coaching. I love it. Having studied and resided in numerous countries, Claudia understands how different cultural perspectives affect communication. She is fluent in English, Hebrew, and Spanish. Welcome, Claudia. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Thank you, Pamela. I'm more excited to be here today. It's really exciting to have this conversation with you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to dive into the last part of your bio because I'm curious about your languages and how you came to become fluent in all three from very different cultures, very different societies.
I grew up in Mexico City, so my Spanish tongue, and I still dream and count in Spanish, write in Spanish. So that is my main language. And then me and my husband at age 24 decided to go do a master's degree for 2 years in Israel. And that's where I did an international program with students from like 25 different countries. And somehow life happens and we ended up staying there for 15 years. And then my husband got transferred to Toronto, Canada, and I've been living here for the past 16. So when people tell you, you need to know what you're going to do the rest of your life, I'm like, oh, no, you don't, because you have no idea.
Right. I mean, we get asked this question when we're in middle school. What do you want to be when you grow up? And I still can't fully answer that question now.
Oh, totally. You think somebody at age 24 would have said, you're going to be a coach living in Toronto. I would have said like, what?
I love it. Okay, well, that gives us a little bit of a picture of your journey. What does your career journey look like? As you know, I see part of it is in there.
So I actually have a BA in nutrition, which I never fully loved. And I adore the profession of public health because I think it helps you to ask great questions. And even then, what I was really interested in is why it's so hard for people to change behaviors. Why do I, if I give them all this information and they still don't change their behavior? And what is happening there? And how can I change behaviors in populations? And I just really wanted to have an impact in the world. So I worked for 20 years actually in the field of injury prevention for children because that was the number one cause of death for children in all of the developed world. And it is a lot about changing our physical environment and our behaviors. And I loved it. So I did that in Israel, and then I actually did that in Toronto when I arrived, and I continued working in the field. And then in 2010, I got sick and I had cancer, and I had to spend 2 years at home. And we were relatively new in Toronto, and I started to try to find a new job or what I wanted to do. And I just started talking to people. And one of the women I talked to, she just said, you're really good with people and you really love connections and behavior. You should be a coach. I had no idea what the coaching profession was. And somehow I just went in and said, okay, let's try it. What do I have to lose? I want to use my age and my wisdom and understand and maybe create something new for myself. And I never looked back. So I trained in coaching. I did also train in mediation and relationship coaching because I truly believe in the importance of the interactions between individuals for us to have a more fulfilling life. And I have been doing that for the past 12 years full time ever since.
What part of your career stands out as most rewarding to this point?
I really love being a coach. I love how you can change in few sessions how a person perceives, loves themselves, and acts in their lives. I don't think there's something that with just a few sessions can give so much to a person. And I get to talk to people now all around the world in different languages, and I'm constantly amazed about the human beings I meet. It's like I learn so much from my clients that I really feel every time it's something different.
Yeah, I can imagine the growth that you must be experiencing just through, like you said, through your clients. I love that. And notice you also mentioned a love for public health and the reason why, because you get to ask all the right questions. And tell me a little bit more about your love for public health.
First of all, I loved the master's that I did because it was people from all over the world, and the interesting of how different cultures see different things. And now at the same time, we were so different, but so the same, that I just was fascinated with it. And because public health is about asking, does this cost this or what is happening here? And not taking the first answer that comes up, but really being in the question and trying to figure out and not making assumptions of what the solution is. And I think that's the same thing for coaching. It's exactly the same idea of, wait. I'm not going to go with the first answer my client gives me. I can ask around. I can move around. I'm not scared of and usually you don't even know what the answer is going to be in public health. So I just really am fascinated by that. And I like science. I like knowing why I'm doing something. If the next question is going to be, why did I go into, positive psychology, is because I finished my training as a coach. And I felt like I knew it worked, but I couldn't tell you why. I couldn't understand why I was doing what I was doing. How come we knew that this is the way it should be? And I was really looking for some type of validation that I was still in the science field and I still had that background of what I was doing. And that's why I went into positive psychology. And I really think that that is the science behind what we do in coaching.
Yeah. Well, actually, my next question was going to still be on public health because I'm curious to know, you've spent a lot of time in three different distinct regions of the world. And I'm curious to know what kinds of things you're seeing in public health in those three different areas that stand out to you. Are there intersections between the different issues that you might see arising in public health, or are there distinct differences?
I think the same thing that I see is that you need to understand where the client is coming from. So if I would see in Mexico, you need to understand, I taught there how to read and write to poor women. And you had to understand that where they were coming from and what that meant from them and where they were sitting. And when we started doing injury prevention in Israel, you had to understand the different populations because I worked, with every single part of the populations from Christians and Arabs and Muslims and ultra-religious and non-religious. And if you want to convince them to change behavior, it is very different for each one of them. The people that make the decisions are different. How the families work within themselves is different. The perceived barriers that each person has, some are just for us, but others are just for cultural environment and where we are. That is a similar. And then in Canada, it's a country full of different people from all around the world again. And at the same time, the rules are different, but why people don't do certain things keep them being the same. So to me, it's so interesting how different and at the end, the same we human beings.
Ready to advance your coaching practice? Join the Institute of Coaching and tap into the world's leading resource for coaching science and professional development. With over 4,000 members across 130 countries, the IOC offers invaluable networking opportunities with an elite global coaching community and innovative learning to broaden your knowledge and keep you at the forefront of coaching best practices. Engage in cutting-edge learning events with world-renowned coaching scholars, from webinars and seminars to discussion groups, research projects, and more. Try any membership free for 30 days. Use promo code IOC Podcast and visit instituteofcoaching.org/join to get started.
Yeah, at the end of the day, yes, we're human beings. And I agree with you in terms of listening to who people are and where they're coming from and what their stories are is profound. So yeah, let's bring in the positive psychology piece. How does the work in public health that you've done align with positive psychology?
I never thought about that one, but if I'm thinking about it right now, when I was working in injury prevention, the parents that were more positive, that had more hope, that believed in something, could more easily accept when an accident happened. But the parents that felt that they had more control, that they could actually do a change, were the ones that would change certain things more. So there is, those that just gave up and said, oh, nothing can be done. And then those that said, but wait, I know it's hard, but what if we change this or we adapt to this? And even if it's not perfect, maybe I can do small changes that will help my children. I guess the same thing in positive psychology. Why are some people more resilient, more willing to change, adapt, and grow, versus others that just have a harder time going there?
Oh, that's interesting. And I think that's one of the reasons why the work in coaching is so grounded in positive psychology, because it's about possibilities and what we can do. Are the clients you're working with now, what's the profile? Are you working with corporate clients or health professionals?
I work with different types of professionals, of people. I would say most of my clients are professionals of different kinds. I love working with people in the health field because that's where I'm connected. But I also have a lot of engineers and tech people and more, I don't know, they like my style, I guess. Less creative people. I work with men and women. I work with different ages because I didn't like to be in a niche of just working very tech with something. Most of them are professionals in different stages in their life. And the thing that is that they're ready for change. They're ready for something else. They just don't know what to do. So that's the leadership work I do. But I also do a lot of conflict and communication coaching in the past few years, because I find that that's a skill that we're not taught and that it's becoming so needed in our world. We don't know how to communicate. We don't know how to listen. And I also think that's something that can be easily learned in a coaching engagement. So I try to combine both, or just have those separate areas.
Well, it's so interesting because in today's society, it feels like there's a growing disconnect in communication, a growing impatience or intolerance for other points of view. I don't know if you're seeing this or if this, from your vantage point, but what are your thoughts on in terms of how we are communicating with each other nowadays?
We're not. It's terrible. I always keep on saying school has to change. We need to teach our kids finances and communication. The rest, they can now Google it and find out. They don't need a math, but they don't need as much. But we're not. I think people get stuck and they dislike conflict and they don't know what to do with those emotions. They don't understand what they need and what they're asking for and about ourselves, which is part of the coaching process. And then they don't understand that how I say it and in the way that I say it may permit the other person to hear me. Because if I say it in a certain way, the other person is just going to defend themselves. It's our natural mechanism. So how can I do it? And imagine if we could just sit people together and not have to convince each other and just say, I may learn something from you. And if I learn something new, it's already been a wonderful conversation. And how much we could do together if we could just have those conversations more.
That's so interesting because just yesterday I diffused what could have been a really long, drawn out social media argument. The person was ready to debate, and I said, you are absolutely entitled to your opinion, and I respect your opinion. And at that, they just said, thank you. And I mean, they were ready to fight. I just think that there's a lot of that, especially behind screens, where we are not engaging with each other. And I'd just love to hear your thoughts in terms of working with clients. I don't even know, how often do you work face-to-face with clients these days as opposed to, behind a screen?
95% of my work has went on Zoom since the pandemic, and it has stayed that way. And I think it works perfectly. So only those that really want to work locally, I would say it's 5%. Even those that are very close to where I work will still do it by Zoom mostly.
There's something about the video that makes it feel, and I don't know if we've just adjusted, that makes it feel fine and natural, as opposed to when cameras are off or when we don't really get to see the person that we're engaging with. There seems to be a difference in communication.
I do like to see my clients. I know some coaches coach by phone. I get a lot of information by just seeing my client and seeing if they're writing or if their faces, or there's a lot of listening information there that it's through seeing them. Quickly, well done, just on screen.
So let's talk a little bit more specifically about your positive psychology and coaching. You got certified in positive psychology coaching, and just curious to know what drew you to that and how are you using it in your world now?
I just needed to understand why I was doing things. I wanted to continue learning. I knew behavior change was difficult. I found that coaching was trying to change our own behavior, our own actions, our own thoughts, and I wanted to understand more. And I love learning. So it was just a natural sequence to go into positive psychology. How has it changed my coaching? And to me, is everything in coaching is about positive psychology. It's not that it's specific to different areas. It is how my coaching has just become based on positive psychology. The person in front of me is natural, resourceful, and whole. And they don't have to be perfect. I need to help them be human beings with the things they like about themselves and the things they dislike about themselves. And I need to remind them about their strengths and their values, but be empathetic to themselves, that not everything is the way they want to. So it just became like, that's that whole person approach. I want to see who's sitting in front of me. Not if it's, a senior manager, a director, or a physician. Who's the person sitting in front of me? What do they need to be the best person they want to be? I think it's gotten better over the years since I studied the certification almost a decade away. There was so much pressure in being happy, in being joyful, in being fulfilled, that it almost became the first sessions trying to tell my clients, we're not here about being happy. We're here about learning to live the best way you can with who you are. We're here about changing parts of you, but others is just accepting that that's who you are. Because life, you can't be happy all the time. Life is tough. There's a lot of difficult challenges out of our control, and that is okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that brings in that whole concept of false positivity and toxic positivity, and how that is actually more harmful than it is helpful.
And I think people still think of positive psychology as that positivity, and it's like, yes, and is my favorite word in the dictionary. So, and it's about being realistic, and it's about accepting who we are.
Well, with that said, let's define it. I mean, how would you define positive psychology for an audience that, for which this is new?
I would like to say that it's the science and psychology that started asking, why are people more resilient, more fulfilled, happier than others? And not only asking the questions, if you're bad and you're not good at this, let's make you mediocre like the rest of us. But it was asking more, why? Why are these people stronger, more fulfilled, more resilient? What are my strengths? Maybe I just need to use my strengths more and not only work on my weaknesses. So it was asking it was like shifting the questions to a place of, why does that work better? And could I teach the rest of us what they're doing that maybe we can learn from them?
Right. I love it. It's a beautiful definition. So how do clients respond to a coach that has a positive psychology approach? How have you seen the response?
I don't even think they know that my focus is positive psychology. I think they just see somebody that is inherently positive and asks them, what works, where have you felt joy, what do you like about your stance, what are your strengths, what are your values. But I don't come up and say, this is only positive psychology. I just treat it like this is coaching and this is where we're going. I do, when I bring in some of the tools of positive psychology, tell them where it's coming from. I use, I like using via character strengths a lot, or different things. So I will tell them, this comes from the branch of positive psychology, and this is how they studied, and this is what they are. And then I bring it in. But if not, it's not part of the conversation anymore.
And so are there distinct differences that you've noticed in your coaching between, before the positive psychology training and after?
Yes. But I became certified in positive psychology like 2 years after I was certified in coaching. So it has really melted for me in the past decade. I think the biggest change was accepting that my client was imperfect and human, but accepting that me, Claudia, was also imperfect and human. And I think like for first-time coaches, because I also do mentor coaching nowadays, up to a few people a year, it's like they all want to bring results so much that they stop permitting themselves just to ask questions. And if the question was a bad one, ask another one. And some sessions are better than the other. And also accept your biases, accept that, wait, am I making assumptions? What's happening with me? Treating myself also as a human being.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. So what do you do to stay fresh in the industry, to just keep yourself up to speed on the latest research and training around positive psychology coaching?
I'm a member of the Institute of Coaching. I take a lot of the webinars and the courses that you give, but I also have some mentors that I really like in positive psychology that I follow and that I've continued to taking courses from them when they offer them, because I find them refreshing. Susan David just started one about, in the workplace and being more fulfilled in the workplace, and I love her work. But there's many others that I just follow with, and I continue to work with them and just learn from them and take courses just to continue learning.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I want to jump back a little bit to the piece on listening, and I would love it if you would be able to walk us through the listening model that you utilize, and how you help clients discover their strengths. And those might be two totally different things. So if they are, we can talk about them separately.
So let's talk about them separately, because I think they are truly separately. So to me, listening is the number one skill that as a coach you need. You need to work on yourself and understand that it is a very hard skill to really be able to completely listen to the person in front of you. And it's a continuous learning ability that is like a muscle that you can't stop working on it, because it's like if it's not natural to us. So to me, the model is, when I have a client in front of me, they're supposed to be just listening and then thinking about themselves. They're sort of listening to me, but if they just wanted to adapt it to themselves, that's actually what they're supposed to be doing. Then I would say most of us spend all of our life listening to respond. And that's the instinct. Oh, I heard this much of you, and now I know what you wanted to say, and then I just blurb it out. As a leader in organizations, in the healthcare, we know, we immediately tell them what to do. In our households, we hear half of the sentence of what our children need, and we tell them. We're already, assuming half of it, and then we just, okay, I know what they need, and then we just tell them. And it's really hard to let go and just listen for the sake of listening, just because I might learn something. And only then can we start having a conversation. It's really hard. And when there's emotions involved, when we do mediations, even worse. Oh my God, people are just so into themselves that we can't even try to understand the other side or listen to the other side. And then to me, the last one is what I hope most of us coaches have already done, which is listen also to what is not being said. To me, the information of a silence in my client, or my client writing something down, or them getting excited about something, or their voice coming down, is all information that I want to mirror back to them, because it's the richness. They haven't said anything, but they've said so much also. As coaches, it's really hard to listen all the time.
It's a muscle.
It's a muscle. And I don't know about you, but I like talking and I like interacting. And I really had to learn sometimes to I remember going, Claudia, just passing my hand on my lips and saying, just permit silence. Permit silence with my client. If he doesn't say something for a few seconds, it just means they're thinking. Permit silence in our relationships with others. There's nothing wrong with that waiting. It just means that you're really listening.
This is so beautiful. I mean, permit silence. Can you talk about that a little bit more and why that's something that we really struggle with?
I think we're afraid of silence. We think that silence is giving the cold shoulder or maybe not being present. And I'm not talking about days of silence or hours of silence. I'm talking about 15 seconds of silence, 30 seconds of silence. It is actually a very powerful tool in communication because it teaches us, it permits the other person to decide, right, do I trust them? Do I want to say something? What do I want to say? And I don't have to run to another thing. Sometimes we ask a question as a coach and then immediately ask the other one if the client didn't answer, or we do that at work or with our families. And I'm like, wait, ask, and then don't do anything for a little while.
I love it. It's one of my favorites. My classes get a little freaked out when I ask a question and I sit in silence and wait.
Isn't it fabulous what happens? And try it with your children. I with adolescent kids especially. Oh, it's amazing. You just sit in silence, suddenly they start talking.
Okay, so for everyone listening today, that's your homework is try silence in a conversation, or of course when it's applicable. But
and can I add something more on listening?
Please.
It's also learning to listen to ourselves, and I think that's also hard.
Mm-hmm.
We know how we feel, or we think we know how we feel, but we're not really in touch with our intuition. We're not in touch with our feelings. We're not in touch with who we are. I have some clients that we not even know their strengths, and we don't know what we really want because we're not taking the time to listen and ask questions of ourselves. I have a lot of clients that come to me and say, I want to feel respected and I want to feel acknowledged. And I stop there and say, what does that mean to you? What makes you feel respected? What is important to you? What are your assumptions? What are the things? And listen more to yourself becomes also very powerful.
Gosh, yes, that's so good. The assumptions piece just jumped out at me because so often I hear people talk about what somebody did to them, and it's all the way they perceive it is based on assumptions they have about that person as opposed to that person's story or that person's reality. So, and I want to jump into the strengths. Are there ways that you help clients discover their strengths, and what does that look like?
I do have to say that I use often the Via Character Strength Assessment that is free online and that it's easy to use. I am actually not a fan of a lot of assessments because I don't like to put people in boxes on this type or this type. I don't believe so. I believe we're much more complex. But I think they did a beautiful job in that Via Character Strength Assessment. I like to tell my clients, this is a start for a good conversation on what are your strengths. Because as incredible as it is, I think we don't see our strengths because they come so naturally. We don't believe their strengths anymore. When somebody tells someone, that's a strength. Not everybody has it. And you could use it in other areas and you could bring it in front of you in other areas. And you also need to know that if you're managing someone or working with someone, they may think totally different and have different strengths. So something that is so easy to you could be really hard for the person sitting in front of you. And I think the one that catches them the most is also letting them understand that we can overuse a strength. I like to give the example. I had a very senior leader that was very empathetic. It just came very easy to him. And he was saying, I try to give constructive feedback and nobody gets it because he was overusing the empathy, that he had such a hard time saying it that nobody understood that it was supposed to be, something that was to be constructed or a difficult feedback. This awareness of our strengths, what comes naturally, what doesn't, that we can actually change them if we want, but just using what comes naturally, it is so important to who we are.
Yeah, I love that. And it just reminds me of breathing. I mean, there's some things that we do that's just as natural as breathing, whereas some people struggle to breathe, but we take that for granted. We don't really think about the everyday just process of breathing, whereas somebody who struggles with it, it is absolutely something that they have to be intentional about. And so I see strength similar to that. So what positive psychology tools do you utilize to check in with yourself as a coach, as a human being?
I think I had to start by knowing my strength, by knowing my biases, by knowing my assumptions, and by just accepting a little bit of who I am and permitting myself to just be who I needed to be in that moment. And I think the moment that I didn't expect to be perfect in every coaching conversation and always be on top of it, and I let go of the results and just brought myself, that imperfect human being, I became such a much better coach. And that's one that I use a lot. And the other one, I'm going also through cancer again. And one of the things I'm learning the most is to permit myself to be sad and cry, and to know that I'm positive and resilient and strong, and that I'll get out of it. Being positive doesn't mean anything, because right now I need to walk and cry. I can be both. One thing won't be taken away from the other. And it's so enriching.
Yeah.
And it's so useful. And then, I go for my walk and I'm finished crying or doing whatever I needed to let go of. And then I can get my strength back and do also the positive things I needed. But permitting myself to just be.
Absolutely. I mean, there's value in all of the emotions. And, if I were to really think hard about it, I might be able to challenge the notion that even tears and sadness isn't positive, because it is all serving our well-being. We have to let those things out.
That's an amazing way to see it. Even that is positive. And to me, it's also, people say, oh, but you're strong. I'm like, yeah, I'm strong. But right now, this is a bad day.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not happy today. I am struggling today. And I'm still Claudia, the strong, independent, person that I've always been. But I can combine both. When you can do that for yourself as a coach, then it really helps. The other one is just really knowing that I do have assumptions and I do have biases, and I need to catch myself when I'm bringing those to the coaching sessions and make sure I push them away.
Yes, I think we all have those, but we don't all necessarily. We're not all proactive, as you have just described being, And so I really appreciate that. Is there anything else that you would like to add that that you think is really important to the work that you do?
I like one more tool in positive psychology that I use often with my clients. It doesn't matter how senior they are professionally, which is I make them put 2 circles in a piece of paper, big circles, and I make them put the word "and" in between the 2 of them. And I actually then make them put a happy face in one of the circles and a sad face in the other circle. And then I talk about, this is you, I, and everybody else in the world. We all have things we like about ourselves. We all have things we dislike about ourselves. And let's explore now who this wonderful person in front of me is. And then we talk about their strengths and the things they forgot. And then we talk about the things they dislike about themselves. Which ones are they just going to accept? Which ones do they want to change? But I make the emphasis many times of the word "and" in my coaching. I think that's the part from positive psychology that I really brought into. Always bringing the "and," because I just feel it's liberating in every aspect of our life. Personally, professionally, for others, if we can continue to just think there's always an "and." I think this way, and I disagree with the person, and I can also move here. Bring that "and" in every place you can. Expands so much for all of us.
Oh, that's so powerful. I think that's a message we all need right now. And I can think of how it can be applicable in so many ways in different arenas. So I thank you for that. So where can we find you? Are there any, publications we should be looking for, or websites or programs, anything that you've got that we should be looking for?
So I've been writing a monthly blog for the past 4 years. A little bit of a stop this few months that I'm more at home, but I write it once a month, and I write it around positive psychology, personal development, leadership, and a lot around communication and interpersonal relationships, both work and personal. And I would invite you to receive it. It's always very proactive with tools, with specific examples, with the idea that I think is just a reminder of something that I can do differently, small, that can add and make a real change in our lives. And I would invite everybody that's hearing this to subscribe. It's in my website. The website is Claudia, CLAUDIA, Arrow from Aronowitz, ARO.com. And you can just subscribe there. And I have a lot of different information around communication and positive psychology, and it's all there for you.
Oh, thank you so much. I love this. Well, Claudia, I really appreciate our time together today. I've learned a lot. You've got me thinking about some really important things. The "and" stands out to me, but also, just your journey, I think, has been intriguing to hear about. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me and for all your fabulous questions. And if I went all over the map, it's because I'm absolutely excited about your fabulous questions, and it's a pleasure being here.
It's totally great. It's been a great conversation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Coaching Revealed, brought to you by the Institute of Coaching. You can learn more about the Institute on our website at instituteofcoaching.org. You can stay up to date with new episodes of our podcast by liking and following Coaching Revealed. You can also find us on social media on LinkedIn, Instagram, and X with the handle Institute of Coaching. We also love hearing from our guests, so please reach out to us with thoughts you have on this episode and any questions you have about coaching. Until next time, this is Emily Tarani with Coaching Revealed.